What is up? Welcome to the American Peloton. I'm Jonathan Crane. I am the reigning king of Tuesday Night Worlds. That's my new sign on. I don't know. I'm going to try some out and we'll see what sticks.
There we go. I'm Ben, head coach at Skyway Cycling and team director at Skyway, presented by Domestique Coffee.
Yeah, so I've had to change it because I'm currently 2 points, if I'm doing my math right, from my Cat 1 upgrade. So
That's huge.
I can't say mediocre. And I know everybody's going to say, oh, they made it too easy to get a Cat 1 now. That may be true. I've gotten all those points in the last 2 years because, they extended the thing to 36 months and the entire 22 season I got 0 points because I broke my wrist at Sunny King, which is super early.
Yep.
Anyway, so I've been racing. I've had some good results here. Got to race with some guys. JP from Work Hard, Be Humble, and Fury, former crit national champion, was on Project Echelon. Now he's on Blazers up in Nashville. Had some good times in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, you had some strong results, a sixth and a third in the Pro 1 too. So really
Yeah.
strong.
Yeah, it's been fun. Looking forward to some more racing this weekend. Not going to get out to the ACC stuff until Gateway probably from here on out, but we got some local-ish stuff in Georgia that should be fun.
Yeah.
ACC season is flying. So, but all the calendars are compressed, and it's kind of good, but it's flying by.
Yeah, it seems like they're very sectioned off. So like you have your USA crits very early, and then ACC kind of takes over the summer. And being in the Southeast, the ACC races are tricky to get to because, like, pretty much all of them, but Gateway and Tulsa and Momentum Indy are not within driving distance of the Southeast.
Yeah, USA Crits kind of took all the stuff that is near us, and then everything that's become ACC now is farther away. But we've got some racing to talk about for sure. I think we're just gonna bop around to, we're doing these shows bi-weekly, especially like during the racing season, bi-weekly ish, and we've had a lot of racing, some of which wasn't streamed, some was streamed. Obviously we're always doing our digging on who's posted YouTube clips of them and what we can find. So we're gonna talk about the highlights that we've seen and the analysis we can do, and then probably go a little bit more in depth on Salt Lake, both because that just happened and because we could actually watch the whole thing. I think I want to start with Dairyland, just because that is a lot of racing. I think that the headline, like early in the week there for me, is that Rainstorm sent their B squad, is what they were calling it. But their B squad was still like Fergus Arthur, who had a breakout season last year, and they were cleaning up pretty early in the week. And then the A squad came in and continued to kill it.
Yeah, because like the way I kind of envision Toad is like the first half is a little bit lower as far as like how stacked the fields are, and then they all come in for the ACC race and then race that final week.
It's kind of the same thing as Speed Week. Like it starts off with Athens, Spartanburg at Speed Week, and all the big teams do that. And then the Pro 1 races, they're still high-level teams, but it's not like every single team totally full field. Dips off definitely for the midweek stuff too. But Lucas Burgoyne, Austin Outlaws, you think he maybe saved their season by getting a couple of wins there and clinching the overall?
Definitely. Because without that, what does Austin Outlaws have this year?
Yeah, I mean, compared to how we talked about them last year, which is they had a lot of talent and they just like weren't putting it together. And that's when they were aviators.
Mm-hmm.
They've been a lot more successful this year, but a lot of that success has been in like CBR races, stuff that is lower level. And even Toad, they didn't win the ACC day at Toad. Rainstorm did. Which is why we're saying they, after having kind of a rocky Tulsa, pulled it together and had a good. I think they're back on track. Sure. Not to say that they even were off track, but they had a target on their back, and other people took aim at the target, I guess, is what I would say about Tulsa for them.
for sure. They also had some like unfortunate like racing incidents that took them out of contention that aren't necessarily,
Yeah.
but yeah, they definitely like were the team that everyone was looking at and had a tumultuous Tulsa overall.
They had a lot of slide outs at Tulsa. So maybe they figured out whatever issue was causing their slide outs, or
Are they still running the Michelin tires?
yeah, I don't know. Maybe they just all dropped like 5 psi, or maybe
Maybe.
the roads are just grippier. The asphalt has more grit to it in some of these other places. Although Tulsa wasn't particularly smooth in my experience. Um, on the women's side, we talked about it a little bit before the show. Alexis is just better than everybody else. We talked last
Yeah.
show about, is this the end of the Legion era? On the women's side, it's really not. Like, they've continued to be dominant almost solely through the fact that Alexis is just like head and shoulders above every other rider. I would actually be interested to see if like a world tour team, and I think she's maybe doesn't want to do this, but if a world tour team would like give her a guest ride, what she could do in a like a women's Giro that's going on right now, or I don't know, somebody offer her maybe not a stagiaire spot, but a guest ride for like one thing. I would be interested.
Send her, like, how they sent Keegan Swenson to Road Worlds?
Yeah, yeah,
Just
yeah.
send her to Road Worlds and see what happens.
Send her to the Olymp. Is she? She's done the Olympics in the past. Am I making that up? I want to say she did the last Olympics on the track, or her sister did.
I can't confirm that.
Either way, send her to the
Let me
Olympics. Let's let her do the Olympic road race. Whoever, USA Cycling, if you're doing Olympic selection right now and you choose, obviously you got to go like Corinne Lebecki, but if Alexis Magner doesn't make
They're
her selection,
sending Kristen Faulkner.
is that the only person we get though? How many selections do we get?
Let's see.
Gotta get 2 or 3, I would think. Yeah, Faulkner is that triathlete though, right? Is that who I'm thinking of?
No, she rides for EF.
Who's the triathlete that showed up to nationals and just like crushed everybody?
Shoot. I don't remember who that was.
Regardless, this is my plea to the Olympic selection committee, or see if Magner wants to go for the track. She's got a good sprint on her. She could probably do well in a scratch race or a Madison.
Okay, so the women's Chloe Dygert, Taylor Knibb, and Kristen Faulkner for the road race. And then for the men, it's McNulty, Sheffield, and Jorgensen.
They're missing a trick on the women's side.
Yeah. Let me see if she's been to Olympics.
That's mostly just my own curiosity, but talking about how she has just decimated everything, it's almost not worth going through individually everything she's won. Pretty
Just
much
assume she's won it.
If it's the ACC day of one of the series, with one really notable exception that I was psyched to hear about, because again there was no live stream, but Kim Stoveld, who we have talked about on this show a lot, who's on Automatic Abus, at the ACC day of Tour of America's Dairyland, soloed the last like 3 laps and was able to stay away for the win, which huge. I think we keep saying like, oh, this is a huge breakout result for her, and then she continues to top that, and that was another one where, once again, she's upped the ante. I think Automatic Abus may be like, if we're talking about performance versus expectations, might be having the season where like they're outperforming at least my expectations. Not that I thought that they would be bad, but they had kind of a building year, and then looking at their calendar, it was like they're not really focusing on America. So for them to have then won Athens on the men's side and an ACC day on the women's side, that's a strong year for any team that's not like Legion or Reign. Any kind of like smaller is not even fair. Just like non-Legion domestic team.
Not like if you're like doing a tier list of teams solely based off of like budget size, results, whatever,
Hmm.
automatics like you have S tier is like Rainstorm and Legion or something like
Rainstorm, the
that.
Legion ecosystem, Project Echelon.
Yeah. Then like A tier might be like I don't know. B would be like, in my opinion, automatic would be kind of that B level.
Yeah, yeah. Second or even I might have thought they would be third based on where their year
Hmm.
was last year, but
Yeah.
they're having an awesome year, even with a couple injuries. Ed Veal coming back from a pretty heavy fall last season. Dawson out with a broken collarbone right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, still crushing it. They also got the silver bar preem, the automatic Abus women. There is a gambler preem for a silver, a, a chunk of silver that is apparently worth $1,000. That's something we speculated on last year when Mac Dorf won it. Like, it's
We
cool
like
that he
did
won a
the
bar of silver, but how much
calculation.
money is that?
Yeah.
Apparently, it's around $1,000. Depending on where you hawk it.
It might be, I think it's more than the prize money to win the race. That's kind of like
That's a
the
good gambler
incentive for
preem.
it. Yeah.
I like that.
I
But yeah,
think the
automatic
gambler premium,
Abus.
like, it can't be like $50. Like it needs to
Oh, it's got
be
to be huge. Yeah.
it's gotta be huge to like, I don't know, make it worth going for. Otherwise it's kind of whatever.
Right. It seems like on the men's side, there are enough big lead out trains that generally the same train that wins the race is going to sweep. The gambler
Mhm.
premium doesn't factor into the tactics as much or mix it up in the way that it's maybe designed to.
Yeah.
Although it would be interesting to see somebody go like absolutely full sprint to come over the top and just get the gambler premium and pull off on the men's side. Like if it is that much money, I
Right.
don't know. I might be tempted.
I would be. And, maybe Ulises Castillo, that was his plan, and then got the gap and held it in the men's
Yeah,
side
yeah. So
this
let's
year.
get into um let's get into this sort of like how the races played out because we were again able to watch the full things for the Salt Lake men's and women's.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, on the men's side, so Rainstorm went 1, 2, 3 on the Saturday, which is the non-ACC day. I went into watching the stream of the ACC day, kind of expecting more of the same, and it was interesting. Like it stayed pretty fast all day. There were a couple of moves that looked like they should have gone, but they were big. There were 8 or 9 guys, and there were always 2 or 3 in there that weren't working, and it would come back. But Ulysses Castillo, who was on Denver Disruptors last year, I think most notably for this show, he was the Denver Disruptors guy in the breakaway on Crybaby Hill at Tulsa in
Yep.
23. He's jumped over to I Speed Felt,
Hmm.
which is a team that I really only know. I think they're kind of a California centric, like domestic elite or whatever, like Cat 1 team
Yep.
racing mostly on the western end of the country. I mostly know them from watching the CBR races where they were hanging with your Legions and Blazers and Thriva SRCT. There's kind of that whole
Yep.
California ecosystem.
Yep.
iSpeed's in there, so massive result for them.
Absolutely. Like for the team, especially, I think Ulises Castillo is kind of one of those like dark horse kind of guys. Like, but he's been around forever. He
Yeah,
was on Jelly Belly back in the day, and so he's kind of stayed. He was on Wildlife Generation, then Disruptors. Then when they folded, is going to Ice Speed Felt. So that's kind of was kind of his soft landing.
I think was he on? He might have been on KHS,
He
LA
was on.
KHS at
He
some
was
point
on.
too.
K. So yeah, it was Jelly Belly, KHS Maxis, Elevate KHS, Wildlife Generation. Then you're
The thing I remember about Elevate KHS is there was at least one year they had these helmets that looked like Koopa Troopa. They were like just a
right,
solid black like Lego hairpiece helmet. I wonder.
right.
I don't even know what brand that was. Those were insane though. Kind of
Were they
first
like
gen
a
Aero helmet.
cask? Were they like a cask or
I
something?
don't think so. It was one of those brands that like doesn't have a large presence in the US and you don't like I don't think you could just go buy one.
Yeah,
They looked crazy though. And I mean, I guess it's good like branding. I would pick them out in the group. But yeah, he went Did he go with 3 to go?
No, it wasn't 3 to go.
How long to go? It was before the last lap that he launched. So did he get the
Right.
gambler
No,
preem
he
and then
got the
keep going?
gambler preem. Yeah. So he went for the gambler preem, got it, and then kept it going. And it was like a couple of the tour stages where there's a break and then the sprint trains are like coming right there and they barely make it before the sprinters get there.
Mm-hmm.
That's how that panned out. So he like went with maybe like 2.5 to go to get the gambler preem, got it, held the gap, and then like won by like a bike length over Summerhill.
Yeah, and that puts Summerhill into the lead. I think Summerhill is leading both the points, like the sprint points competition, and the overall.
Summerhill is leading the points competition, and Para is winning the
The
overall.
overall of ACC. So
Yep,
Rainstorm has both.
no
So they
surprise.
lost the battle, but not the war on that one.
Yep.
They maybe slightly mistimed the lead out. On the women's side, this was a interesting race tactically. Maybe like a little bit boring to watch, save for a couple moments, but a big break of like 8 or 9 got away mid race, about halfway. Got it maybe even a little before halfway. Got a huge gap. The field kind of sat up and the break kind of sat up because they were so big, and they were both they were both playing games. I think the field could have caught if they had really wanted to, but most everybody was represented up there. The interesting thing about the break, though, Alexis Magner got it on this one. I think that if you're in that break and you're not, so Alexis also sat on most of the time because
Hmm.
she was happy for it to come back and then sprint from the group. She would have been fine with that. And she said she was even would have been happy for her sister to sprint on that day. So she really had the card to play of like, I'm not doing anything.
Yeah.
And that's why no one else wanted to work. It seems to me that if you're one of the teams, especially the teams that had 2 in the group, you would just start machine gun attacking off the front of that. Even if Magner seems to be covering everything, you go. I would think I would even form an alliance that would be like, let's. I'm not going to chase anyone but Alexis, and then everyone starts attacking one at a time. One person goes, Alexis starts chasing, everybody marks her, you reset and do it again. At some point you break her, and then the peloton behind has given you enough time that single rider off the front can maybe hold it. And that's I think the only way you can beat Alexis, because if it whether it's a group sprint or a reduced sprint, like you can't take her to the line.
Yeah. Well, I think it was one of those things where, like last episode, we talked about like if you're in a break with Alexis, attacker, or like don't take her to the line.
Mm-hmm.
But then you made a comment like some of these girls are just like happy to be there, like they're
Yeah,
not like they're just like they're on the limit in the break, and
for
so
sure.
it could have been one of those scenarios where like you know also dealing with like typical breakaway tactics where if you have 2 people in the break your team has the onus to do the majority of the work.
Right.
And so Alexa's like, I'm the only Legion girl here. Like, it's on you to keep this working. And they're like, well, if we don't keep working, she definitely outsprints us in the bunch sprint. So, it's kind of one of those things where, we can at least guarantee a second or third here and just keep it rolling.
Yeah. Yeah, I just think you could use your numbers. It is on you to pull as long as that group's together, and that's why I would want to try and split that group in half. It's not going to be easy for sure. That's
Right.
much easier said than done. She's clearly as strong as or stronger than anybody else. So I get it. A lot of those teams hadn't had any podiums. You pointed out Kingdom Elite
Yeah.
put a, a woman on the podium in
Yeah.
third.
Yeah. Shannon Koch got third, which is a crazy result for Kingdom Elite.
I think is she the one that I think she might be a recent pickup for them. I think she might be the one who was racing solo at Speed Week and then she kind of joined the team after that.
I think you're right. Let me see. But yeah, I thought that was a great result for them. They've kind of been, you know, in the mix,
Mm-hmm.
but not, crazy.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
that's the first time that they have at
Yeah.
like an ACC day pulled off a podium or something.
Yeah.
Some other big results for smaller programs I want to point out. Looking at Tour of America's Dairyland, Clayton Travis from Velocious was second on the overall, so just like really consistent riding all week.
Hmm.
Just a lot of top tens and consistently being there. And same thing for Ryan Jastrab from Team Six. Scored some amount of points every day, but a couple of top tens that put him in third for the Omnium.
Yeah.
That might be the biggest result for Team Six. I don't know how you rank the overall of a week like a Tour of America's Dairyland versus like the win they got at CBR last year, but
I
that's a
would
big
say
one.
that's bigger than CBR because CBR is like it's streamed, but it's local. Like I
It's
think if you ask, anybody, not in California, like you're, someone
right.
who doesn't do what we do,
Hmm.
they probably don't know anything about that series. But like everybody knows Toad. It's been around for like 70 years or something.
Yeah, for
Like
sure.
it's a bigger result.
Yeah. Another big one is Liam Bartman in fifth on the
Hmm.
overall there, racing without a team, which is
Yep.
pretty impressive to be that consistent, freelancing it, you know.
Hmm.
Um, on the women's side, Garcia from Virginia Blue Ridge took the overall with Riley McMullen for DNA. I guess we should also mention DNA Cycling has announced that they are done after this year, which is a shame to see because they've been
That is.
one of the teams that's up there, that's there or thereabouts, consistently putting pressure on. So
Well, they're
hate
also
to
just
lose
like a
one.
legacy team. Like
Hmm.
they are really one of the first and only for a long time dedicated women's professional teams or like Cat 1 teams for as long as I've been involved in the sport. And so it just really sucks to see that, go by the wayside a little bit.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
hopefully, I don't think any of the women on that team are going to have a hard time finding a team to go to next
Hmm.
year. But whether they're able to, get that same level of support, because it's really been over the past year, 2 years or 3 years, Legion, Blazers women, DNA.
Yeah, yeah, and at least they are folding, unlike the NCL teams did. They're folding at a time that is a little more opportune for their own riders. They're giving them enough heads up to say like,
Yep,
at the end of this season, we're done, and you guys need to find a somewhere to go. They have enough headway. They're not going to come in next season and have the rug pulled out from under them, which is good. Like kudos to the program if it's not working out for making that call and letting their riders know.
absolutely. That's a big one because now they have 5 months. It's really the time of year when people start to look at recruiting for new teams and things like that. So it's really well timed for that. Like you could announce it in October, and then a lot of the rosters are set by October.
Right.
So it's really good. A lot of the girls can get that last result they maybe need to stand out for a different team director, and I kudos to DNA for at least giving them the time to do that.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to talk about another topic that came up from the race this weekend in Salt Lake, which is there was a big injury. A rider, and I've seen a name. It wasn't something that rang a bell. Oh no, was it Jastrab?
It was Ryan Jastrab.
Oh man,
Yeah.
Ryan Jastrab from Team Six got his arm. Here's what I've heard, and I have not watched the video. I'm afraid I don't need to see that. And it's one of those things that like I know there's a link out there somewhere, but basically he fell with his arm. If you're watching us on YouTube right now, not listening to the audio, um, looking at a picture of the fencing, which is like that white fencing with 45-degree angle slats that and flat feet that I think we see pretty commonly, and I think what happened is similar to what happened to Justin Williams at Tulsa, which is he sort of tipped over into it, and what happened to Justin was his arm got caught between two of them. As he fell, he knocked one, and it scooted over, and his arm hit the next one. It sounds like what happened to Jastrab was maybe that his arm actually went inside one of the. It's not a triangle, I guess.
Parallelogram.
Yes, thank you. One of the 45-degree angle parallelograms that comprised the fencing, and he was going like 40K an hour, and uh, what I'm hearing is that it basically almost ripped his arm off.
What I heard, like this is hearsay, haven't seen the video, don't know if I want to. But that like his arm was being held on by like a single like bulk of muscle
Yeah,
is
and
what I had heard.
according to the article, it's they have saved it, and he is going to keep the arm. But the fact that that was even in question is insane and really sad. But it's sparked this whole conversation across the sort of like crit racing, bike racing world on the internet about safety. And we're looking at an Instagram post from Ty Magner, who kind of talks a little bit more about Legion's season up top and congratulates Rainstorm. And then gets into at the bottom, no thanks to USA Cycling for perpetually putting this scene on the back burner in terms of safety exposure and development. Elite races have had avoidable incidents with the old, clapped out, rusty barriers at the past four events. Riders' arms nearly being amputated, faces destroyed, broken bones. Um, yeah, this post seems to be kind of like it's the one I've seen shared the most in regards to this phenomenon, this incident.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it seems to be getting the most traction. I think everybody agrees that something needs to change barriers wise, but I don't think there's a lot of consensus around what. I've been trying to track all of the, not all, a lot of people's suggestions on what we should be doing. And I've seen everyone agrees that something needs to change, but I've seen both all of the courses need to be totally enclosed all the way around, and there need to be less barriers, especially in cases where there, and I can see an argument for the safety of this, where there is like a curb and grass. It would be safer if we were just hitting the curb and flipping into the grass versus putting a barrier that maybe doesn't have to be.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the crowd control issue, and I've seen it suggested maybe that's you need more volunteers. Maybe you stake it and tape it in the grass like a cyclocross course. There are a lot of opinions. I don't know what off the top of your head. Do you have anything that jumps out as low hanging fruit safety wise?
Okay. If you are going to totally enclose the course, there in that same, I saw a story from somebody where it was a video of Ty getting pushed into barriers from a crash, and they were
Yeah.
like plastic jersey barriers.
That was
And
Sunday
yeah,
at yeah, they're the water filled like orange and white
yeah,
type that snap together.
yeah. And the way that crash happened is if they were using the old yellow metal barriers, Ty would have gotten destroyed. But with that plastic barrier, he hit it, leaned into it, got through it, and there was no harm done.
Mm-hmm.
Got away clean. I think that's a reasonable solution. If your proposed solution, like if there is no negotiation on courses being entirely enclosed, that to me is the best possible solution.
Yeah, I think there's some talk about those being they're a little harder to get your hands on. They don't make us they take some work. So I've worked with those a little bit, like at work, using them to do street activations and closures. I'm a project manager for a nonprofit that does place-based economic revitalization. So that includes a lot of stuff on public streets. I don't know. I'm thinking about what it would look like to enclose completely enclose a course with those. But yeah, it the key to those is that they're a flat surface, and I agree with you
Yep.
on this. The safety there, the video of Ty, he hits it and sort of rides along the barrier. Both of his wheels
Mhm.
hit it and ride along it, and he leans on it and slides along the surface. Um,
What
I
I
think.
what
Oh,
I'm
go ahead.
getting at is like that was a good example of a flat surface. Like
Yeah,
whatever is enclosing the course, and like that was a tangible, like you can envision what I was talking about.
totally.
But like there has to be a flat, seamless surface
Yeah,
that if you bump into it, you can lean into it.
and those are
And
good because they don't take any additional work to make a flat surface. Another thing
yeah,
I've heard. Okay, if we're gonna keep using those barriers that are straight up and down, and have the feet that are T-shaped, that when you run over them, you hear that ta-ting, 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 ta-ting. That's how you know someone is all the way against the barrier. Uh, and people are right; those are bent, rusty, clapped out. Like I agree with Ty. I've seen some of those where, as straight as you can get the line of barricades, there's still some deviation from one to the other just because some
Mhm.
of them are more worn or bent or warped than others. So you can't get them that straight. And I know they often will try to zip tie them together so that people don't like pick them up and just walk through, including racers trying to get out on the course.
Yep.
We've been known to do that, but the zip tie is not enough. And one thing that does help, I've had crashes before where I've been pushed into it and there's advertising on it. There's like that foam core
Yeah.
board advertising.
Hmm.
I think the lowest hanging fruit is we require that foam core advertising, and we place it in such a way that like there are two barriers touching each other rather than going one advertisement on each barrier where the advertisement ends in the same place as the barrier. You overlap it halfway where like at the seam of two barriers is where you put the middle of the advertisement, and then
Yep.
in the direction of travel you overlap each advertisement a little bit so that as you slide as I
The
fall onto it and slide along it, I'm not catching the edge of each ad. As
yeah.
I'm moving along, I'm kind of stepping down each one. I think that would keep you from going through and
Hmm.
increase the chances that you don't catch any edges. Like those things are not hard. They're not solid, but I think that they would keep 75% of these really bad accidents where something gets through. At Athens 2 years ago, one of the Hugh Dog guys who got third,
Hmm.
um, coming, he finished the race and then coming into turn one was just blacking out, blew the corner, and he hit a barrier which moved, and then his chest hit the next one. He got impaled with the corner. He punctured a lung on the barrier.
Right. Yeah.
And thankfully he is okay. I've talked to that guy since. He's back on the bike and everything, but like he couldn't fly the next day because he uh he had been punctured by the barrier. And I think putting that advertising on there in a way that blocks that seam would help, I
Yeah.
think. Um
I
oh yeah,
think
I see Lee in the chat who's on the team on the team of
sound team
Jastrab
six.
on
Yeah.
team 6. I hope that what he's saying is that the arm is saved.
Yes, that's what he's saying.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm definitely glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Um,
So
another. Oh, go ahead.
one thing about the safety thing is that like there are things that are going to happen no matter what. Like we are still cornering 4 to 5 wide at 35 miles an hour through 90-degree corners. Like there's going to be
Yeah.
incidents where coming out of a corner you get pushed into the barrier and you go over the barrier. Like that's never not going to happen. But there are things like the honestly the worst crashes with barriers are the ones where you're going in a straight line and you get pushed in and your bar's hooked into that hole.
Right.
And then you're
Exactly.
And like
So
that's what we have to avoid more of.
and that was really the cause of the one where Justin Williams went down.
Hmm.
The video I've seen, it looks like that the rider on NGCA got squeezed into it. It looks like his shifter basically went into that triangle, and like that's what hooked his bars. So it's not that it would stop the crash from happening to have those advertisements there, or just some flat, smooth surface there. But what
Yep.
it would do is he would hit that and slide along it. And maybe if he goes down, it's not that he's going from 40K an hour to dead stop, flip over the bars. It's that he's going 40K an hour, 30K an hour, 25 sliding on the ground. It's
Yep.
road rash. It's maybe a hip or an elbow, but
Yep.
I think it severely reduces. Another idea that I've seen is people were talking about the Sand City crit in NorCal that happened this last weekend, local race in NorCal. Um, and I found some footage of it. People were talking about these barricades, which appear to be. People are saying that those are made of PVC and they're slanted back. They don't have the
Hmm.
exposed feet in the same way that the barricades we're talking about do. So this is basically like a PVC rectangle um, that's tilted away from the riders, and I think that helps the problem we were just talking about even more because even if you're riding with your wheels right on the absolute edge of space that you could roll on, like as far to the edge as you could be, the thing they're going to hit is like a consistent surface. There's a bottom to those that is consistent. There's nothing your wheel's going to catch on.
Hmm.
And because it's slanting away from you, your hoods are still going to be clear of the surface. And then it looks like these have some kind of like mesh netting, which I don't think is going to work as well in terms of uh, keeping you from falling through the thing. But I think that does solve another thing I've heard as a potential concern with the advertisements or the foam board, which is wind. And I have seen, days where it's windy enough that they have to take the advertisements off or,
Hmm.
just lay the barriers down or whatever. Um, yeah, the Sand City crit, a part of the point we've heard, and I'm seeing it in the chat right now, is that these being PVC are actually meant to, if you do hit one of these square on because it's PVC, if you lay into it and it falls over and you hit the next one dead on, it's PVC, which is going to give and collapse. The problem with the metal ones is you can move one this like laterally, and then the one that you hit dead on is not going anywhere. So
Yep.
it's an energy transfer issue.
Yeah. I just like unfortunately like what's cost effective. Like
Mm-hmm.
because for race promoters, like you if USAC starts implementing rules of well you've got to have this type of barrier, and none of these race promoters have these types of barriers, and they're going to go and complain, but we don't have the money for these barriers, and then you start to see races close,
I
right?
think what you're gonna get is a most of them are renting the barriers from someone local.
Okay.
So some of the races are not gonna have a local provider that has those barriers.
Right.
Now I'm not sure logistically if some of the series like USA Crits or ACC like have used the same barriers race to race, and that's one of the things like
Hmm.
the production truck that drives around. If so, it might be worth it to invest in some of the barriers like Sand City that we were just looking at, um, or maybe just for a requirement to be one of these high level races have another issue I've seen, and I think this is true, is there are no kind of standards around where it's appropriate to have or not have barriers.
Yeah.
And a point that Ty made that I also agree with is a lot of times these courses are just kind of set up by volunteers without a lot of oversight. Like
Hmm.
I've definitely seen, and I've done this, seen courses where someone's just a volunteer is throwing barricades out there, and wherever they land, they land. And as a racer, we're going around afterwards, and like racers are saying like, "Ooh, they should move this over a little bit because there's like a pothole on the apex or whatever." Like,
Yeah.
and we're just like sliding them to a place that we think is a little bit safer, and they stay there because there's no guide on how that should be done. Now,
Yeah.
anything that involves public streets is going to be incredibly complicated, and there are an almost infinite number of permutations of like conditions that could affect that. But I'm open to um what people's takes on like what those rules should be. So the thing I'm throwing out there is if you have metal gates, you should have to put the foam board on them, and they should have to be zip tied together. Foam board is overlapping the creases.
Yep, fully agree. I think like, and that's if you are, saying the course has to be entirely enclosed, and you're not getting rid of the metal gates.
Yeah, I think maybe for an ACC race, or for if you're gonna have like a pro level national criterium calendar, whatever level, there should be a level of race that requires full
Agreed.
enclosure crossing guards. And if you have full enclosure crossing guards, the placements should require, you know, and I've heard some people say like, oh, well, they can make money off those advertisements. It's like that is true if you can sell all the ads, but it's harder to sell all the ads. So I'm seeing dissension in the chat. This is part of why we do it live. I wanted to kind of like crowdsource these answers that PVC can shatter into sharp edges. So I've been seeing so much praise for this Sand City criterium. What I want to know is, did anyone actually the barriers that we were looking at from that appear to be? I'm looking at a YouTube video from Sean Bagley from the race just to get a sense of the lap. It appears that they are mostly on the start finish straight. It's not fully enclosed. Oh, one thing I do think should be fully outlawed, and I think David Dawson from Automatic made this point, is something we saw in at least one spot on Salt Lake, which is trying to stretch out the barricades you have and using those barricades that are kind of like bike rack style. They're not really made to be. They're like raw metal barricades where they'll place one and then they'll have some caution tape and then another one and then some caution tape, because that's actually just creating an edge every few feet that doesn't necessarily have to be there.
Yeah, that's bush league. I okay. This is my thought on it. Like, if you're saying this is, we're part of this race is part of a national series,
Mm-hmm.
all the big teams are coming. That is now the standard for which you have to abide by, like all of these standards. Fully enclosed course, certain safety measures in place. Because like stretching out barriers is like local $5 crit type of
But I
stuff.
think even like that specific scenario where you place a barricade, space,
Yeah.
tape, next barricade, space, tape, that should be not
Yeah.
only not allowed at that, it should be like banned. Like
No,
that,
I'm
you can't do
agreeing.
that.
Yeah.
You should
I'm
either
agreeing.
go,
Yeah.
yeah,
Because like that should be like the fact that it was at Salt Lake at national race is what I'm saying. Like
yeah,
that's ridiculous.
that's way beyond the
Um,
pale, because that shouldn't
yeah.
even be, that should be explicitly not allowed even at a localish race.
Yeah.
So it looks like this Sand City race. Another thing I've seen suggested is some kind of standardization about where padding is placed. If you're going to do something where, like the race we're watching, the Sand City criterium, I'm kind of just letting some laps of this place so that I can get a sense, just because this is one that I think I've seen probably 4 or 5 people say this was an example of a good, and maybe they think it's good because it didn't have any incidents, but
Mm-hmm.
a good use of barricades. And there are big stretches of this that have nothing, and then there are some stretches where they have not cones, but like those candlestick orange sticks that have some caution tape wrapped around them, which is not. I don't know. I have mixed feelings on that. I think if you blow through that as a rider, it's gonna tangle you up, but maybe not. I don't know. I think that probably does give you enough time to just pull brakes and
Mm-hmm.
be okay generally, and hopefully it does stop one of the other things, which I believe it was Tulsa a couple of years ago, where somebody got killed because a guy just walked onto the course. So that's another concern
Yep.
with the like, we should open it up more. School is controlling the pedestrian flow. So the, tape thing does that maybe. Um, Yeah, in the chat I'm seeing from Honey, I think the cost is mostly cities demanding sheriff police presence for road closures. That is a huge cost, and one that
Hmm.
cities can choose to defray if they want to. Yeah, and the savings that they could apply from not having to pay for that could go to these. Uh, that's where Waterfield comes into play. Actually, I've found that with our local police, if you use those water-filled barriers that Ben is talking about or was talking about, and that they did use in Salt Lake, those are actually like rated to stop a car. You can place it easily, fill it up with water. Problem is, you probably need the fire department to come. They're the only ones that are going to have enough water to fill a bunch of those things up.
Yeah.
So getting them on board is cost or political connection or something. But cities are more willing to let you use less police presence, because what they're afraid of is if you have some soft closures at some of these intersections, meaning it's not a barricade that would stop a car, which even some of these metal barricades aren't. They're afraid that someone's just going to drive through it, or someone's going to pull up to it. Racers are on the other side of the course and they're going to move it and drive onto the course or something. So that's why they require so much police. So
Yep.
maybe it's some combination of using metal or using the water filled barricades to do the closure, and then something inside of that to actually define the course, because they're we're asking for one object to do multiple jobs here, to like stop people from walking on the course, define the outside edge of the course for racers, and stop racers from going off the course and cars from coming on the course. Those are all kind of related, but not exactly the same function.
Right. That's I don't know, and I guess in the drops is saying like, and do racers and teams need to pay more to cover these costs?
Ooh,
And
I don't know if that's
that's
racing is
okay.
already so prohibitively expensive.
I was gonna say, like, if you raced any major race this year, I mean it's like $100 a race almost at this point. And so I understand that there's added costs with everything has gone up in price over the past 2 or 3 years.
Hmm.
But at this point, it's like one of those things where you can't keep asking these riders and teams to keep spending more and more money,
Hmm.
unless you are actually doing the thing. And what's going to end up happening is they're going to increase regs by $20 a registration or something, and say it's for increased safety, and then all of a sudden the city goes, well, hey, it's going to be $1,000 more to close the street per hour, and
And then
then
safety is the same. Yeah,
and then safety is the
rinse and
same,
repeat.
and we spent 20 more bucks for nothing. Uh, so no, I think that's going to be the responsibility of the race director to find funding for, negotiate with the city, or negotiate with the rental company. But
Yeah, I also think and I'm pretty sure Nathan is not in the U.S., so this is maybe a
problem.
U.S. issue.
I
Ray
know.
is saying he doesn't think the water barriers need to be filled. It's true that they don't, Ray, to stop a person, but if they're also, I think in the case of Salt Lake, because what Salt Lake did was take an extremely wide, like 5+ lane road, take three of the lanes, put water fields down that, and then leave traffic on the other side. So I think in that case they did fill them with water, because they weren't just to stop the racers. Like I was talking about, they were also theoretically stopping cars, and not just giving the cars like here's a little line, don't cross it, but like if you put water in those things, they actually stop a car. Somebody's texting and drifts into it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, Australia. So like I know like in Europe, like if you go to Belgium and do the kermesses, a lot of those are like government subsidized to the point where like the entries are basically free. And the race directors are not even trying to make money. It's a volunteer only situation. Like
yeah,
we don't have that. Everything in America is for profit unless you're a distinct nonprofit. So
yeah. I've
like race
seen
directors are trying to make money here. And that's
yeah,
the other side of the coin.
yeah. I've seen this talked about in relation to, I believe it's Slovakia tends to like way 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 outperform versus the size of the country. at the Olympics, but in endurance sports in general. And I've seen a lot of analysis of like how is this tiny country producing so many top level athletes, and it's because they have local. I think they call them sports councils, but it's basically like a Department of Parks and Recreation or whatever. But what they put a lot of money into is funding events. So those local councils are they are, for one, they're part of the city government, so they're not like an outside guy going to the city and saying, "Let me close the road so that I can make money off of it." They're saying, "We are internally the same organization. Let me close the road to do my department's job." And I
Yep.
think they're getting the road closures for free, able to put some what funding they do have to use for like infrastructure stuff that goes that way, and then the cost of registration is really low. It would be interesting if municipalities that are like really throwing down on building trails and like doing active outdoor stuff to sort of like bolster their community as a hub of activity or whatever, to increase their I don't want to say just property value, but I feel like a lot of towns, I mean, Bentonville is the obvious example, but they're really leaning into that and they're putting a lot of money into it.
Yep.
If they would put money into events as much as, and I want to see the infrastructure for sure. We're lacking in infrastructure. Um,
Well, there's like a I'm forgetting the name of the theory. I learned about it in college, and basically, it's like basically the theory comes down to if you are a government that has a poor reputation, it behooves you to start funding sports teams, which is why like Astana is funded by Kazakhstan and they have a professional cycling team, and
mhm.
UAE sponsors one, and UAE sponsors all other sports. It's because it makes your country look more developed and positive in the general public's eyes without actually having to increase the overall quality of life in your country. And so a lot of these towns are basically doing this. Well, we'll put this like 2 mile stretch of running path here, and
Mhm.
that's going to make our city more desirable to millennials or older Gen Zers,
Mhm.
and now we can charge more for all of these things without actually having to do a whole lot of other things like put on events and things like that. It's like a cheap way to improve the overall quality of life in your town. And so I think there's different definitions of like what a city government views as active outside living, as opposed to like what you and I as performance athletes determine as outdoor active living, where they see that as like building pickleball courts and like putting a 2 mile running loop in a city park. Whereas
Right.
like we see it as like you need a professional sports team and you need to close roads for events and things like that. It's different definitions.
Yeah. I think it's a cultural thing for sure, and I think it's a cultural difference. But I think the real answer is that it's not either or. It's kind of both
Yep.
and.
Yep.
But that's maybe just not where we are in America. I think, all right, we're coming up on an hour. We normally try to keep them under an hour. I'm gonna say share this episode with people. Tell them not even to watch it. Tell them to just comment and tell us what to do. Let's. I want to hear what people's suggestions, specifically people who have suggestions around like, here is a standard. I think that each corner should have this many feet of barricade that should have this kind of padding on the end. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
want to hear a specific suggestion of like link me to the type of barricade to a place I could rent it, and tell me, give me dimensions. I'm curious to really drill down because I think we all agree that something needs to change. Um, and I see a lot of suggestions of that. I want to see specific interventions.
Yep. Absolutely. Because something's got to change. We just got to figure out a solution that is both effective safety wise and cost effective for race promoters. And
Totally.
there's going to be an X somewhere, and it's not going to be those shitty metal death traps.
Yeah, it's definitely not that. That is not the move. All right, cool. Well, I think we're gonna have a couple more races before we get together in a couple of weeks. We have got what is this weekend?
This is Georgia games this weekend.
Oh, not us. I mean, on the national.
National.
Yeah,
Whoops.
we're our guys are going to be
Littleton.
doing Georgia games. I'll be at Georgia games, racing the road race on Saturday. Nationally, we're going to have Momentum Indy and Chicago Grit, which was formerly Intelligentsia. So we will
Uh,
probably.
you're forgetting Littleton as well.
Am I?
Yeah,
When is? Oh,
that's coming up like this weekend or next weekend because I have some athletes I coached racing that.
okay. Well, I'm looking at it on the ACC website, and they have them listed in. I think maybe I'm looking at last year's order of events.
Let me see, because like I know it's in training. Like I have it in Training Peaks for guys.
Yeah, I think you're right. Littleton is before. I think last year. Chicago Grit was before
Um,
Littleton, but this year they're flip flopped.
it's August 3rd this year,
Oh,
so
yes, it was
never
Taylor
mind.
Katwa. He's in the chat who crashed at Athens and punctured from Hugh Dog, who I believe punctured a lung. Glad you're all right, man. Glad to hear from you. A lot of people with firsthand experience from this stuff in the chat, and I think that's because if you have firsthand experience with crits in America, you've tangled with these barriers a time or two.
Yep,
All
for
right,
sure.
we will leave it there. We'll talk to you guys after a couple of more ACC races.